Morning.
Hi, Jill. See. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7. I think we've got a quorum, but we'll give it a couple minutes. When do you have to go back to school, Senya?
Tomorrow.
How do you feel about that?
Okay. It's gonna be, I'm a junior, so it'll be a bigger year, but I'm excited.
Good. Thanks for making the time for us today.
Yeah, of course.
Give it a couple more minutes and then we'll get rolling since we only have an hour today. If everyone's agreeable. You think, Jill, get going or wait a couple minutes?
Maybe one more minute.
Okay, I guess it's only 9:02.
Yeah.
Well, hi, Judy. Hey, Ryan.
Hi. Yeah, we probably should get started.
Great. Excuse me. Good morning. This is the August 26, 2004 meeting of the Vermont Climate Council's Agriculture and Ecosystem Subcommittee. We're meeting for an hour this morning. Just quick run through of the agenda. We just want to get everyone's consent to the proposed agenda. Then we're going to approve our minutes, from the July 31 meeting. And then the main agenda item we have is to kind of go over our kind of work plan going forward. There's been some changes in the timeline that the council has given subcommittees to prioritize recommendations. And in working with David Plum of CBI, who's the council's main facilitator, JL and I are going to propose a slightly different way to kind of structure that work going forward. And then there'll be a period for public comment, and then we'll wrap up with any next steps and be out of here by 10. That agenda sound okay to everybody? Great. Excuse me. So with that, the minutes from the July 31st meeting are up on the website for today's meeting. If folks have had a chance to review those, would you all be ready to approve them today? All right. No vocal opposition, so we'll consider those approved. Excellent. Let's see. Thanks, David. And David, have you joined this group before? Do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
I think so. I know several of you, but there's others who I don't know. Just to say hi, you can see my name's David. And as Billy said, I help lead the facilitation of the overall council and helping to guide the overall process. And some of you I know from the last time we did this, and it's nice to see faces again. And I'm just providing a little support to Billy, JL, and how to guide the process forward. Not so much an active facilitation, it's just sort of in the background support. But I'm here to be helpful, and it's nice to see you all. And thanks everyone for meeting in August.
Thanks, David. And I just want to also highlight Evan Horn, who I think was here at our last meeting, but for folks who hadn't met him last time, Evan is a new member of our Climate Action Office staff at ANR, and he's got subject matter expertise in our work, and he's going to be helping us as a kind of dedicated resource going forward. So Evan, thanks for being here again and for everything you're doing to pull these meetings together. And Liz Amler is also a new climate office staff member, and she's providing overall support to the Climate Council. So Liz will be probably participating here and there in our meetings as well and helping out. So we're staffing up as we kind of have a little bit more time to do this work, which is great. So I don't know, David, JL, anything you want to add before we kind of jump in? Okay. So the Climate Council has a steering committee, and that's a group of, I think, 6 or 8 members who meet more often than the full council to make kind of governance and process decisions. They had issued a guidance document for subcommittees some time ago that had set a deadline for us to deliver prioritized actions to the council in September or by early October. I think they heard from all the subcommittees that timeline was overly optimistic and that folks needed more time to do that work. So they've since updated that guidance document and they approved that update at their last minute. And that document is pretty short. It's on the website, and I believe it's probably in the materials David linked in the chat. But the upshot is that we have till sometime in December now to do that work. They have clarified that they are looking for prioritization at the action level. You know, we'd had some conversation about whether it was strategies or actions. They do want to see a prioritization at the action level. They've confirmed that, you know, all the actions from the original plan will carry forward in one way or another to the updated plan. If actions are already complete, then, you know, they may be in a different part of the plan than ones that are still ongoing, or if the council actively decides not to, that actions that were in the first plan are things they no longer pursue, that will be, you know, a different thing as well. But generally speaking, everything's going to carry forward that's underway, but they are looking for us to prioritize at the action level what we think are the most pressing actions for the council to advocate for in the upcoming legislative session. They've also worked with our staff, have worked with them to develop some new tools to do that, some new kind of spreadsheet templates that not only provide the opportunity to prioritize existing actions, but basically serve as a checklist to go through each action, determine whether the way they're drafted is appropriate, whether the language of the actions should be tweaked or updated or revised, and also opportunities to kind of combine actions into more comprehensive composites if that's what folks think is most appropriate. So I think, you know, that all mirrored some of the conversations we had about how's the best way to do this. And I think folks are quickly realizing that it's not as simple as just picking your top 5, that there may need to be some more conversation and massaging of the existing plan to get those priorities where folks need them. So that's all good news, and all that information, you know, all those materials are linked onto the website. And what we've discussed, JL, David, and I, is that we would like to recommend to you all a structure that the other substantive Climate Council subcommittees have adopted, which is that of task groups. And task groups are smaller groups of subcommittee members that are less than a quorum, so they don't need to comply with public meeting laws, and gives the task groups a lot more flexibility to share documents and just operate in a more ad hoc nature. This is in no way intended to like avoid public scrutiny. You know, we're still be incredibly transparent with all of our work, but it just creates a little less formality and more nimbleness so that the groups can actually get some work done outside of these structured Zoom conversations. And what we'd like to propose for your consideration is the development of 3 task groups aligned with the 3 organizational themes that we had discussed some time ago that you know, generally relate to emissions reductions, resilience, and adaptation interpretation, and then we'd already begun to start to organize our priorities under those themes. But what we'd like to do is see if we could break the subcommittee into those three groups and have those groups do some work and bring back some preliminary recommendations. Sometime probably in later September for the full group to consider. So I'll pause there and let Jael or David add anything that I've missed or gotten wrong. And then we can just open it up to have a conversation for questions and see what folks think.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. I just suggest reading through the guidance document if you haven't done that yet. It is helpful.
One thing I'd add just to supplement that is you can call them task groups, you can call them prep groups or something. Essentially what they are is like preparing some material to look at in the full subcommittee like this, so that in between subcommittee meetings, you can come in prepared for those subcommittee meetings with some work done and some proposals for review. And the idea is anytime the subcommittee looks at something, all those documents are shared publicly on the website like this, just like they are today. So I sometimes call them planning teams or something. Task groups is a perfectly good name too. But I think the important part is think about them as opportunities to prepare a full subgroup meeting, subcommittee meeting, and just be able to accelerate that conversation a little bit in the subcommittee itself.
Great. Judy.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about the direction this year. Last year, the entire committee was a part of planning like the themes we were going to discuss and if we were going to have a task group, what the task group might be. But now we're being told by agency people what the task forms are, and Jael told us that Billy, her, and someone else picked the themes. So if you're eliminating our input from some of this stuff, and then you want to go into smaller task groups that eliminates the input from the people in the bigger picture, the bigger world, where is that going to lead us? Down the track of a one-minded person?
Yeah, that's a totally fair question and concern, Judy. I just want to clarify, this isn't, agency staff driving something. This is something that Jael and I have discussed as co-chairs with David's help. But I think we're trying to balance the need to work in a somewhat expedient and efficient fashion with the goal of consensus and including everyone's voices. And I think, as David said, all of the decisions will come back to the full group. And, we're not trying to exclude anyone's voices, but as you know, if there's more than a quorum meeting, we have to do it publicly. It's been a real struggle for us to find times when the group can meet as a group. And our hope is that this model can provide a little bit more flexibility for some of that prep work and kind of detailed work that can help support the full group when we do come together. So that's, I think, how I'm viewing it. But I appreciate your concerns. And, if there's anything we can do to make sure that the scenario you discussed doesn't happen, I'm certainly open to it.
Well, I think what we did in the past that seemed to work much better was we had a consistent day and a consistent time. We knew on this time, on this day, we had a meeting. And I don't know logistically if it was easier that way or to do a doodle poll, but it was easier for me to know every Thursday or every whatever we had a meeting. So that might eliminate the time problem. But I find it very disturbing to eliminate the public. Because your words, I wrote them down, your words said the task group so that we don't have to include the public.
That's not what I said, Judy. I said that
I wrote them down.
Well, that's not the intent. If I said that, I apologize. The intent is so that we can meet and be more nimble, we can share documents and just do the work that we have to do. And every decision will come back to this full group. We'll do it publicly in recorded meetings with opportunities for public input. We're not trying to do anything to diminish that. We're just trying to create a space for individuals of the subcommittee to work in an organized way to tee up decisions for the full group.
I understand that happens, but then you limit the time they get and you limit the times they get to speak. I don't know. I just think that we need to be more considerate of the public.
We were going to talk about scheduling we were going to propose having just a set time going forward. But that discussion was going to happen later in this hour. And the themes, as far as the themes, we basically took the themes that were already written in the climate action plan and just divided our tasks up within those themes. But we're very open to hearing, like, if you think, I mean, I'd like to hear your ideas in terms of themes.
Well, I think there should have been discussion around the themes that got changed by the Climate Council. Because we made specific recommendations. The Biomass Task Force made specific recommendation, and the Climate Council changed them. I think there should be some discussion as to why. Do we want to move forward? Do we want to recommend them again? What's happening?
So Judy, if I'm hearing you correctly, you want to spend a little time looking at these themes and making sure that what's important is incorporated appropriately in these three themes here. And that hasn't happened sufficiently yet.
No, that hasn't happened, but that's not what I'm saying either. What I'm saying is, these things say pathway 20, 21, 26. What about all the pathways that didn't get accepted by the Climate Council? We haven't discussed those. We made recommendations. They weren't accepted. I don't even know if they were considered. And I think we need to have a task force that discusses those. And do we want to move forward and recommend them again this year?
Got it. Okay. And so in addition to biomass, are there other things that are coming to mind, Judy, that you're not seeing, you didn't see in the initial climate action plan? And
not at this time, because we made 40 or 50 recommendations. We made a lot of them. So off the top of my head, I can't tell you what they are.
Okay. All right. Well, it seems like having a moment to sit with these three sort of areas of focus would be helpful. Make sure everybody understands like what are the kinds of things that would fall under that. That seems like a helpful thing. And we could spend a little time even today doing that, make sure everybody understands sort of what's encompassed under these.
Well, see, this is a perfect example of the loss of control as a committee that we've had. So these three themes were picked. This morning I get an email saying, would you like to serve on number 3? I don't get a choice. So I'm assuming others got other emails that said, would you like to serve on this? So the choice to which one to serve on has been decided by somebody else who sent the emails. And so the lot of the decisions that as a committee we had to make, we can no longer make.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that email, but I think there is an intent that folks, this is very much a volunteer situation. So
Right, but what if
know,
you wanted, my letter said, would you like to serve on 3? What if I wanted to serve on 1?
I
That's
think
fine.
that would be great.
Well,
Yeah.
the letter didn't say that though.
Sorry, Judy. I kind of dropped the ball on sending that out. And basically I was asking if you and Earl, or Andrew, one of the two of you would want to champion that task force, but you don't necessarily need to champion it. You could go serve on a different task force if you wanted to.
Okay, but that was not clear.
Yes, and I apologize.
So Ryan's had his hand up for a little bit. I just want to, I don't know if Ryan, you're going down a separate path with that hand, or if it's related to what we're talking about.
There was an invitation to provide commentary on the subtask group process, and I was just going to speak on my experience last time and share some documentation from how that went. But if this conversation, I don't want to interrupt that. I would just comment that this is a non-legislative group. We don't make rules. We don't pass laws. We are, open to the public and accept public comment. There's a lot of those other processes that are much less open and transparent. And after a subtask group process, in which you can discuss, any and all pathway strategies and actions, and if there's support to bring it forward, it will come to this group and it'll be discussed in an open recorded meeting. So I think it's an important function and has been for the 10 years I've been in state government, where when you have a public body to, do the work of analyzing and resources, you either need to hire contractors, professionals, or break into smaller groups to really do the discussion and work that functionally can't happen when you can't share documents in a real-time manner. So definitely speaking in support of this process, and I will just put into the chat a summary from what was called Subtask Group 5C. I shared this with the group 2 meetings ago. It just describes the charge to membership. We had 11 meetings of just that subtask group between April and June, right? So you can have much more frequent meetings, which is very tough to do with a full group. The process is outlined there, as well as the recommendations. And we were able to dig, very deeply into some of the research and programs, and return to the group with options. Not we should do this, but rather an analysis and a discussion of what those recommendations could be. So that's my piece. Thanks.
Thanks, Ryan.
Earl, well, please share with your thoughts.
Yeah, quiet everyone. I agree with Judy and the things that she was saying, and making it more democratic in terms of how we structure. And you mentioned biomass as a concern, which I'm also very concerned about, but also with PES, payment for ecological services, and carbon trading woven into this process. On the agricultural side, the generation of methane for energy, landfill gases, and those things. So these are things I'm really concerned about. And I was looking through the 3 themes, and I don't know where PES fits in those. I guess we just weave it in each one, where there might be others concerned like me about carbon trading, which is proven to not reduce greenhouse gases. And these other solutions, biomass, biofuels, are not reducing greenhouse gases either. So the point for me is, how do we reduce greenhouse gases? And agricultural practices that sequester carbon, but trading with polluters for these credits is not getting us to our goal of actually reducing greenhouse gases. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Leonie.
Thank you, Earl. Any other thoughts on what we've covered so far, the updated timeline and interest in breaking up into working groups to bring recommendations back to the full group?
I think today we should decide if we're going to break into these task groups, whether they should be open to the public or not.
Sure, we can do that. The challenge is that I don't know that these groups are even going to have meetings, right? I think often this work happens through the exchange of emails, shared documents, things of that nature. So, they're working groups. They're not meetings where decisions are being made. So there's just some inherent challenge with that.
That's fine, except I served on 2 of those task committees last year and they met regularly. And if we do meet, then I believe we should include the public.
I can say, and it's too bad Jane's not here to help out. And one of the things that from the last time around with task groups, it was very challenging to post all those meetings and to do that as a public process. And so this time around, the idea is use task groups only to prep up meetings of subcommittees. And it can just be 1 or 2 volunteers in the subcommittee who come prepared to say, here's some things. And that's the image this time around about how to use them, as opposed to make them as like a subcommittee into itself. So that's the vision here, is a couple folks being willing to prepare for the full subcommittee meeting. You want to meet regularly as a subcommittee. And I think Billy and JL are going to talk about a more regular process of subcommittee meetings. And you just are able to prep those up well and come prepared to discuss things. That's the vision here.
Okay, so David, maybe I should just send you the letter, because in the letter, JL, I don't know how to say your name. Is that right, JL?
Yes, Jael.
JL, okay. She says each task group will have support from A&R Climate Action Office for logistics and facilitation, and will likely have technical support for other relevant state staff. So
Let me just clarify, those are Billy's words, because I posted Billy's letter.
Yeah,
If you see it says read.
we're going to try to provide resources to everyone to get this work done. That's what we've been doing all along. There's nothing.
All right, but that's the
nefarious
opposite of
about
what
that.
David says. That's the opposite of what David says. We're going to do that. We're going to do the work and give it to you to present. Isn't that what you just said, David?
No, what I'm saying is it's an informal set of folks who come together, and there will be support in the nature of like these documents that are posted. If you look at the samples of how the current initial climate action plan has been organized, so you can see all the content from the current climate action plan. You can work with that content, make some recommendations up to the subcommittee. That's what I'm trying to express. It's a handful of folks. Liz can be helpful, Evan can be helpful, in supporting it with those templates and helping make progress there.
So they're not actually on the subcommittee.
It's support. It's just being helpful. Like, here's a template. If you want any questions how to use it, kind of thing.
Right. If questions come up about, hey, has this action been implemented? Where does it stand? They can dig into that and provide information back to the task group. Things like that.
But it's you all as subcommittee members that are driving this, right? So you all subcommittee members say, okay, we've got a meeting on September 13th or whatever, whenever your next meeting is going to be. We want to talk about a package of emissions reductions ideas. We're going to go prepare and look through everything from the initial climate action plan on those specific issues. These are the ones that are completed. We'll take those out. We don't need to deal with those anymore. It's over. These ones all carry forward. And by the way, this thing's missing as well, which is important for us this year, right? That's the kind of conversation. And then you bring that up to the full subcommittee and say, yep, we went through all 30 or 50 of the actions from the initial climate action plan. These are the ones, everything carries forward except for this, because actually we'll combine it with that. And when we did a little gap analysis, we felt like these kinds of things were missing. And then you spend an hour or two in your subcommittee going through all that. And everyone's like, thank you for doing that work and helping us prepare for a good conversation. And meanwhile, Evan or Liz or someone is there helping you with the template, making sure you know, like, this is what's in the initial climate action plan, et cetera. That's the vision of how this works. And the real conversation happens in the subcommittee. You're just prepping that up. And so, Judy, I think the idea was the climate resilient land practices, which is the third piece there, the third focus area. There's a whole bunch in the initial climate action plan on that. And so there was a thought that you or Earl or some combination might be very helpful in doing a first pass on that, looking through it, seeing what's missing, that kind of thing. And then you're able to bring that up to the full subcommittee and say, yep, we did a first pass at this, and this is what we came across. This is what we think. This would be some key gaps that we think are missing from the initial climate action plan. That's kind of the vision of what this would look like in practice. I'd be interested to hear from other folks on the subcommittee as well. Does that sound like a good way of working together? You're going to need to have more frequent subcommittee meetings anyway, starting in September. You'll probably meet a couple times a month for an hour or something like that. And you'll have these prep groups, these task groups preparing those meetings and coming ready to talk with more specificity about everything that carries forward from the initial climate action plan, anything that's missing from it. Yeah, Alyssa?
Yeah, I think those spaces to just do our homework essentially informally is really helpful, but I think it's really important that we retain any kind of decision making and discussion around issues that could be contentious for this meeting where everyone is here and it's open to the public and there's space for comment. And I do feel concerned that we may not have enough time built in to have all of those thoroughly with this group, especially just, how many people there are. We want to make sure we get everyone's input on that. But I do think having additional time to do some homework and then share that with the group could be helpful.
Thanks, Alyssa. Yeah. Andrew?
What Alyssa just said pretty much, which is I think we do need smaller groups who have more time to do some of the work in order to make these full meetings of the subcommittee most useful and make the decisions here. So don't take away that decision, but have the ability to work in the background to really be ready and make good use of these meetings.
Thanks, Andrew. Okay. Benja?
Yeah, I agree. I think a task group would actually be really beneficial in expediting the process. So I just agree with that.
Thanks, Senja. Okay. Other views, folks on the subcommittee? Yeah, Stephen? And then Jake.
Good morning, everyone. As someone who has lived 25 years in a consensus-based co-housing community of 23 plus households, I really understand the wisdom of subcommittees and task groups to bring informed recommendations to the whole group, allowing for the kind of transparency that Judy and Earl are calling for, but really support this process that you're recommending this morning.
Super. Thanks, Stephen. Jake?
Yeah, I'm supportive of this process, and I think we're all in some ways too feeling an overall time crunch and capacity crunch with this process, and I think that brings about some additional stress of, are we doing this in the most transparent of ways, and do we have time to fully consider everything that we're personally or organizationally or whatever it may be interested in, because these are hugely impactful decisions and recommendations that we're putting forward. So and in consideration of that, though, it's really hard to keep track of the full scope of things even within this group. So having some time to dedicate what might be more of our area of interest or expertise in these subcommittees, I think will help all of us bring our best selves to the content that's ultimately developed and put forward. And then I do think, though, that does put just more emphasis when we get together as a full committee to really, make sure that we're being as transparent and communicative about our process and the clearly what the decisions are that need to be made meeting to meeting. So yeah, I'm I'm there's things that I'm concerned about with this, and I think a lot of it is like more to do with kind of the external parameters that have been put upon the process. And I think this is kind of the best approach that we have given that. And I think everyone here, I really trust this group to uphold integrity of that. And so yeah, I'm all for it, and let's all like make that commitment to be as transparent and open as we can.
Thanks, Jake. Yeah. Seems like a core principle, right? A core principle here is an enormous amount of transparency at what happens in these subcommittee meetings and what gets ultimately recommended up to the Climate Council, right? And so we need to hold that dear, even as you're doing these sort of practical groups to prep up each conversation.
So what does all this mean? Does this mean we're going to consider another task force committee to review the things that got flipped on its butt with the Climate Council? Does this mean that we're going to allow transparency at our task meetings? I agree with everything everybody said, except the fact that consensus does not include task committees. Consensus is everybody.
Yeah. JL, do you want to jump in on that?
Well, I'm just wondering if there's a way, if people do meet during a task group, that if those meetings are recorded, could they be posted on the website so that people can go review them?
Maybe.
I mean, that sounds great, but it would be even better with additional comments from the public.
Yeah.
Because last year, some of our best suggestions came from the public.
Yeah, and I think the core is ensuring that the subcommittee meetings are well noticed and everybody knows what's going to be discussed at those meetings. Like there's an agenda, it's clear, and there's good process around incorporating the public in those subcommittee meetings. I think you're probably going to start meeting about twice a month in September and October and into November. And so there's going to be significant time for significant public input in those subcommittee meetings. I think that's the key that we need to be super clear about. On the issue of things that didn't make it into the initial climate action plan, I think that could fit very easily into this structure of the three sort of thematic areas. And if something's not there, then this is an opportunity to say, hey, there's a gap here, whether it's because the council didn't take it up or, it's a new thing that's emerged in the last 3 years since the initial climate action plan. Name those gaps, right? And this is an opportunity to do that.
Can we have a copy of the ones that didn't make it?
I'm not sure such a thing ever has existed. I don't think there's like a list, maybe Billy or something. I've never seen such a thing.
I'm not aware of any actions that the subcommittee recommended that didn't get into the plan. But for the biomass task group made recommendations after the initial plan was published to the council, and they moved forward a revised version of that recommendation. But beyond that, I'm not aware of things that we recommended that did not get in.
Well, we recommended biomass plants be closed.
Yeah, that's what I just said, that they took up a different set of recommendations on that one specific topic. But beyond that, I'm not aware of anything else.
Well, that should be discussed.
Sure. I think that's the invitation we're presenting here.
Yeah. So, and there is something in the order of 170 actions coming that are under the umbrella of this subcommittee from the initial cap. There's a voluminous number of recommendations. It's one of the reasons why splitting it up a little bit may be saner in terms of really wrapping your head around what's in the initial climate action plan. One thing I wanted to mention that I don't think we really nailed, and it's in that guidance document, is that the nature of how to prioritize. The first piece of work over the next 2 months is not really a prioritization exercise. It's more of going through the initial climate action plan, confirming that all that carries forward, or doing some modification of that, combining whatever it is. And then also doing that gap analysis of saying, yeah, even with the 170, these really key things are not in there. So that's like the next 2 months. Starting in October into November, what you will be asked to do along with the other subcommittees is to say, everything's going in the plan if you say it goes in the plan. To catch people's attention, this plan is going to name a top number, call it 20, 30, I don't know how many actions, where it lifts up some of these actions from below and say, dear legislators and state government and wherever, we have a really good, robust plan, and we want to call your attention to these top 30 things that we think are really important, that we want to make sure that you're paying attention to, because it's hard to catch people's attention with a 270 climate action plan. So each of the subcommittees is going to come up with a handful. I don't know how many right now, but call it 5 or 10. Where you're like, these are really, really important for us, and we just want to call your attention to them. That's going to be the nature of the prioritization that happens this time around. So it's not like we're prioritizing 170 of the ag and ecosystem actions. We're just saying, listen, of these 170, these top 5, 10 really need your attention right away. And so that's how you'll prioritize it. And we can talk about the criteria used to do that. I just wanted to mention it now so folks have a vision of what that might look like starting in sort of late October, November. Jael and Billy chime in there. We've been part of those conversations together.
Yeah, no, that's accurate, David. Thanks. And we've discussed that a little bit with this group as well. So.
Great. It's more about catching people's attention than Andrew, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you just said. Yep.
Okay.
Great. So we're coming close to the period of time we have allocated for public comment. We want to honor that, though I don't see too many members of the public here right now. But before we move on to that, it sounds like, notwithstanding the totally legitimate concerns, Judy, you've raised, I think it sounds like folks are generally supportive of this task group model. I think we can continually improve on how we ensure that work is preparatory and that and transparent, and no decisions are made at that point, and all that comes up to the public meetings of this group for ultimate decision making. We will develop some more tools and support and kind of codify what David just explained in writing to kind of build out what this process and timeline looks like a little bit more for task groups, so that we all kind of know what we're working towards. And then I think after the public comment, we're going to come back and talk about how we want to meet as a full subcommittee over the next few months. And as you suggested, Judy, I think having just some set dates that ideally work for most, if not all, that we can plan around is probably the best approach there. So any other questions, comments, thoughts on this general restructuring topic before we move on?
Well, I mean, it was sort of addressed, but not fully, in terms of Judy's concern about these 3 task groups and if those are the ones we actually want. And I'm just curious, Judy, if something else came up for you, another idea in terms of task group priorities, or how would you restructure it, I guess?
Oh, I already said that. I would go through the ones that got overturned, and those would be the ones that I would have a task force investigate. Do we want to proceed with them? Do we want to not proceed with them? Biomass.
Okay, I was unclear on that. Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Biomass being, of course, one of them.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. Go ahead, Dave.
I was saying, I'm curious. It feels to me that, I mean, we can try to do a little history making, dig up a little history there. Billy, I'm kind of with you, though. I think like with the 170 actions, I don't think a lot of stuff if anything, got left out. I think it was the biomass thing on the back end of the initial climate action plan that really was the challenge, where the council went a different direction than what the recommendation was to some degree. So I guess the question for us is, or for you all, is how do you take up that biomass conversation within the structure of these three, or whether it needs a separate little structure there. That sounds like the challenge right now. And we can go in and also look if there's other things, but I feel like it feels pretty healthy to go through the initial climate action plan and chunk it up into whether it's these three or some modification of these three areas. Just go through and see what's there. And if it feels like something's really missing in that thematic area, that's the gap analysis you can do and propose how to fill that gap. And
The only reason I'm bringing this up, David, is I just had a 10-hour meeting with a bunch of state agency people, USDA, and people from Washington and farmers on biochar. And there was probably 30 people in the room. And there was probably clearly two sides right from the beginning, from the first comments. And the two sides were clearly divisible. To tell you, the guy from DC said, well, before I came here, I thought I know what biochar was. And and now he doesn't. So Mike, I don't want to see that get addressed, biochar or biomass or biofuels or any of those topics get addressed without input from the public, because there are so many opinions out there.
okay. Well, how about this? I want to make sure you all pause if there are members of the public here. I'm not sure who. I don't know your participant list well enough to know who's a subcommittee member here and who might be members of the public. So I don't want to blow past your public comment moment if there's someone here who would want to speak about what.
Yeah, I don't think so, but let's just take a quick pause. If there's anyone, members of the public who are interested in sharing comment, question, recommendation, please raise your Zoom hand or make yourself known otherwise. None of these names, all these names are known to me, David, so I think
Good.
we're
Yeah.
good to move on.
All right. It feels to me there's two things to do before you finish up today. One is if anybody has additional questions on the three areas, these sort of three groupings of content, let's see if we can quickly clear those up now. I think I would recommend strongly as a subcommittee, you raise your hands like nowish about if you're willing to be part of some of these conversations to prep up these topical areas. So I'd be interested if folks are ready to do that. But before, does anybody have questions about what these three sort of thematic things are? Like they're like three big umbrellas that allow you to chunk up the existing climate action plan, and look at what's there and then imagine how you might do any adjustments to that and or add anything that's missing into that. So, the first thing's pretty clear. It's about the emissions piece of this, reducing emissions and increasing sequestration. So very sort of emissions focused. Again, this is both for ag and forestry. The second one is kind of like a sustainability thing. And maybe Billy or Jael, you can say it a little more clearly for me, but it's about how do working lands survive and thrive in Vermont, both from adapting to a changing climate, to their own economic viability, and workforce issues, and some things around the sustainability of working lands in Vermont, natural working lands in Vermont. And then the third one is clearer about sort of incentivizing climate resilient land use practice, so that natural working lands, wise decisions are being used as Vermont faces different kinds of climate threats, whether it's flooding, biodiversity issues, etc. That's how I understood the three. Billy and Jael, please, or others who have been part of these conversations, chime in, or anybody who has a question.
I think that's a good summary, David.
I guess I have a little confusion still in terms of like where sequestration lives and like reducing greenhouse gases through like building healthy soil and sequestering carbon. Like where does that exactly fall in these three? Because there's so many different things that we can do to do that and kind of covers all of them.
Yeah, I think one is the primary place for that, though, Jael. I think anything that has to do with emissions, whether it's sequestration or just reducing emissions. Jake and then
So
Ryan.
one,
Ryan.
could I
Yeah,
respond
Ryan, if you
directly
go ahead.
to that?
Yeah.
How I think about that is the analysis and tracking of the practices and mechanisms that do the sequestration fits well in task group 1. Taking the output of that increased sequestration and the ecosystem service benefits of increased organic matter and how those contribute to resiliency outcomes, like kind of the output of those practices. I see that in 2 and 3 of how to use that increased soil health from that positive sequestration rate that could happen through that management change. So I don't know if that's probably clear as mud, but the analysis of the practice themselves I see in 1, and then like how to deploy them better or get at some resilience concerns and like where those practices or other strategies fit. I see in 2 and 3. But that's just my conception.
Super helpful. Thanks. And that's the nice thing of bringing this together in the full subcommittee too. Like always bring it back together so you can look across what's happening. Jake?
Yeah, I think between 2 and 3, it feels like there may be some areas of overlap where the viability of a working lands entity may be dependent on incentives that are being identified in 3. So I just think to some extent we need to be open to the idea of like there might be convergence of ideas that are happening as we're looking at each of these, and that's a good thing because that might help us prioritize when we're seeing those co-benefits of strategies. And then just a comment on the language of 1, it might be a little clearer if it was reduce greenhouse gas emissions and sequester carbon from ag and forestry. Just the way it's written is a little feels a little unprecise or imprecise.
Yeah. Jake, feel free to drop a new version in the chat too. I think if you have a vision there, that would be helpful. Yeah. Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think there clearly are actions that will fit in multiple themes and in a way that, to me, in some cases, that's reinforces the importance of those particular actions because it's achieving multiple goals for this work. And then the other thing I just wanted to flag is, unless I've missed it, so we have a theme 1 and theme 2 worksheet, but we don't have a theme 3 worksheet that I've seen, unless I've missed it.
Should be there. If it's not, then that's just a glitch. No, I think you see there's 3 bullets. If you look at the webpage there, so it should be that 3rd bullet.
Okay. All right. I just didn't see that. I know we had worksheets that we worked on earlier, but I didn't see a theme 3 one, but I'll look for it. Thanks.
Yeah, it's on the webpage. I'll drop that link in the chat again.
I got it already.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Judy?
Yeah, so I have a couple of questions. First is we often talk about language, and we have in the past many times talked about the use of working lands. The term working lands is not accurate. All land is working. So we have to start using different language. I know, Jake, you always are really good at critiquing language, but never critiquing inappropriate language like low grade and defective trees and working land. All of those things we have to start taking into consideration. The other thing is under each of these thematic themes, groups, whatever you call them, it says pathways and it names several pathways. Is this limited to those pathways? Are we enhancing those pathways? Were those pathways overturned? And we're creating new. What does that mean when exactly when those pathways are listed?
We were trying to provide some guidance to which of the existing pathways in the initial climate action plan most logically fall under each of those themes. There are fuzzy margins, as many have said, some will fall into others, but it's kind of a cheat sheet to help people do their initial vetting of actions. But you should feel free to look at everything in the plan and see what, fits under the themes from your perspective.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Great. So I think maybe it'll have to happen over email about folks raising their hands and being willing to step up and be part of these preparatory conversations through the task groups. Billy and Jael, do you want to just say a word about the meeting schedule going forward at the full subcommittee so folks get a sense of where your heads are at of what you think will happen or needs to happen?
Yeah, I think what we discussed was ideally trying to meet twice a month in September, October, November as a full group. That the most effective way to do that may be to just pick a day and a time where we meet consistently. Appreciating that might not work for everybody, but hopefully folks, it's far enough out that we can get a good attendance. And then that will give some opportunity for the task groups to work kind of in between those meetings.
All right.
Is that largely what you were thinking, Jael and David? So it may be something like mid-September, late September, mid-October, late October, that sort of framework. And any initial reaction to that from the group?
I would prefer a specific day, early, mid, and late.
Yeah.
If that's what it's going to be.
Yeah. Agreed. So we're up against time here now, so we could either try to do that. Jael and I could put our heads together and just suggest some dates, and unless there's they really don't work for people, we can go with them. Any thoughts, Jael or David, how we should kind of proceed with this piece?
Well, we do have, I think it's September 19th is on the calendar already.
Yes.
As one of our meetings. So I believe that's a Thursday, so we could stick with Thursdays going forward if that works.
That's what we met last for the initial plan. Thursdays was our day, so Ryan says thumbs up. All right, well, why don't you, I, and maybe Evan and David put our heads together and try to come up with a series of Thursdays that we think are going to work and share them out to the group and see if we have some uptake.
Is there, will they be an hour or an hour and a half, or what are we expecting for the total time?
I would think, I know the one on the 19th is an hour because that was the only one that had the only hour we could find that worked for folks. I would hope that we could do an hour and a half going forward.
Yeah.
I think we're going to need a little bit more time, at a minimum. So, all right. All right. So appreciating more time. How about this for next steps? Jael and I will send out some proposed meeting dates for the next few months for everyone to react to. If people via email could let us know which of the 3 task groups you're interested in participating in, then we could send some directions out to those groups and get that ball rolling and have some goals for those groups, to shoot for before the September meeting. Appreciating you might not be able to meet as a task group, but at least maybe do some homework to begin that process.
I have one clarifying question. Can someone serve on more than one task group?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's important and you have the time. Great. I think it's just, task groups are going to need to be kind of nimble, right? And so it's like, yep, let's meet for an hour here. Let's do this. We're doing some email. This is a shared document we're using. That's the kind of thing it'll be. It's like they know, like, oh, yes, this task group is definitely going to need to show what they're doing on September 19th, or we're going to get an update from all three. So some clarity about that is helpful. So everybody knows what they're going for. Evan is going to be a huge resource. Liz can be a resource. We didn't look at those worksheet template things, and I think it's important that folks know their way around them. We don't have time to do it right now, and but I think those are really helpful in doing the task. So maybe there's a part of the the email that goes out is kind of like a clear instruction about all that. And then I think using Evan, Liz, and others to help.
Okay.
To everyone.
Yeah, everyone's starting to drop off. So any other questions, comments before we call it a day? All right. Thanks, everyone. Good luck tomorrow, Senya. And we'll see you all soon.
All right.
Thanks.
Care, everyone. Yeah, it's good to
Thanks,
see you.
everyone.
Bye.